Hello, this is Vladimir, and today I'd like to show you one exercise which I find particularly helpful to prepare for conversations which take place at the end of the week. Every week on Sunday and on Saturday, we meet and discuss certain topics, ideas, and this week we are talking about prudence. So before to go to the club and conduct a meeting, I think about prudence throughout the week. Sometimes I do it once a week, sometimes many times. It depends on my energy level and desire to really dive deep into the topic. So today I'll show you what exactly I'm doing. And this is not, of course, everything I do. It's just one of the exercise. And in my opinion, it's one of the best exercise which you can do too. And if you do it just once a week, you'll find that our conversations for you will make much more sense. So prudence. Well, this is a simple meditation. I meditate on the idea of prudence, but the difference is I'm not trying to shut off my mind and think and imagine what is prudence or write down. Or sometimes I write lots of things about it as well. But here I simply pick up the idea of prudence and I start thinking about it aloud as long as possible. Well, today I'd like to limit myself just with 25 minutes, depending on how well it'll go. So now it's 1 p.m., 1:23 p.m., and I'll finish the exercise no later than 1, let's say 45 p.m. or 1:15. So what exactly should I do? Just think about prudence. So my goal is to talk about prudence as long as possible and to keep attention on the concept. Sometimes I may go aside. Sometimes I may just digress and talk about completely different things. But for me, again, the main point is to focus my attention on the idea of prudence and use language to keep the attention. So even if I say something which makes very little sense, it's not important. What's really important is to keep in mind the idea through language, not just imagine something. Since prudence, it's a very abstract idea. If we look at the real world, we can't see anything which we may call prudence. We may see an action of a person and say, this person is prudent. Or we may say, like, the prudence of some enterprise, meaning that the enterprise is kind of smart and meaningful and whatever. So, but in when we try to think about prudence in abstract level, it's very hard to find a suitable image. Of course, again, if we go on the internet, we may find some ancient Greek concepts, and there they represented prudence as a woman who has a mirror and a snake. So, and you may, when you think about prudence, you may think about a woman with a mirror and a snake and try to figure out what it means, why she has a mirror and what the mirror and snakes represents. But I think it's very misleading. Even if you find certain, concepts and ideas related to the mirror and the snake, it doesn't actually mean that you'll be able to understand prudence, since nowadays the word prudence may mean something different from what it meant before. And definitely there's a particular phenomena which we call prudence. There's something which we refer to when we use this word, and it not necessarily the one thing. It may be many different things, but the point is, like, when you try to think about it aloud, when you try to verbalize your thoughts and direct your thoughts at the idea, it's really helpful to see it much clearer than if you simply think about it without talking, when you try to imagine it, or when you try to read something and memorize. Of course, it's also helpful to go on Wikipedia or any other sources and read about prudence and study something about virtues, other virtues. It may be useful to try to understand prudence in a relationship with other virtues like temperance or fortitude or justice, or the concept of virtue itself. But thinking, like your personal way of analyzing the concept by talking about it and mostly listening to what you're going to say, rather than really trying to say something that you know already. So here it's more like, for me, it's more an exercise of discovering something rather than explaining what I already know. I kind of turn on my verbal behavior, and I don't know what I'm going to come up with. I'm just focused on the idea, prudence, and see how my mind, how my all this linguistic system will work on this idea, will do its job and simply interpret the idea or try to understand it. So what I already know about prudence, I know that it's one of the four main virtues, cardinal virtues. They were called in ancient world cardinal virtues, and it's an extremely important concept in Christianity, and it's also an important concept for Aristotle. His entire ethics is based on the concepts of like the virtue and the types of virtues. And prudence, it doing right actions at the right time towards right people, according to Aristotle, and it can be like learned, and then simply you just use prudence to uh, to govern your actions. So it seems that the more you pay attention to prudence, the better you understand how to behave in the world. And again, it's all about choices. So when you make a right choice, you're a prudent person. So if there's good and evil, if you always choose good and reject what is evil, then you behave prudently, and you exercise this faculty, prudence, and you build a certain type of character. And then, like making prudent choices, you naturally become prudent. But in the world when there's no objective good and evil, it's actually much harder to say what kind of behavior is prudent and what kind of behavior is not. For me personally, I'm a determinist, and I think that all my actions are predetermined by my previous actions, and therefore every choice which I make, every next moment in my life is completely determined by a previous moment, and I can't make any choices at all. So in this case, I do not think too much about my choices which I've done in the past. I may consider them, I may analyze them, I may see how they were developed in the future, to which consequences they led. But essentially, I abandoned probably 9 years ago the view when you think about the past and worry about your choices. When you think, oh, I've done a wrong choice, I did something bad, whereas I could do something better. I had a choice. But now I don't think in these terms. So for me, all past is determined, and whatever will happen in the future is also determined. It doesn't mean that it feels as if I have the ability to choose, but on an abstract level, I don't have this ability. And I understand, like, I'm trying to control my behavior from this abstract level, from this understanding that whatever has happened is happened exactly in this way as it should have happened, and there's no way to change it. And it helps me basically it helps me to be prudent all the time. Since what is prudence? It's an ability to choose the right course of actions in a particular situation. But if you abstract from your uh, senses experience, from your feelings, you see that there's no way to choose wrong. So there's no way to choose bad. Everything you choose has chosen chosen exactly on the basis of previous actions. And I guess what really helps here to become more prudent is a deep understanding of longer periods of your development. So it's not you focus on a week, a month, a year, a decade, a life, and you consider your life as a whole. You're not living in today. You're not living in this week or in this moment. You try to expand your self perception on a broad level, on a honest level, so that you may perceive your actions not from just one day, but through like for me personally, I have personal history of like which is more than a decade long, and I'm writing down everything what I'm doing every day. So not necessarily every day. Sometimes, of course, I may miss a day or 2 days. Sometimes I may miss even a month or a few months. But mostly, I'm trying to be consistent. And for the last 10 years, I wrote probably I don't know how many, few thousand notes, and it's really helpful to see what you are doing on a long term scale by analyzing your notes and reading them all at once, or 1000 notes at once. And by at once, of course, I don't mean in one day, but for me it's probably will take now a week to read all my notes, even if I dedicate all my time from morning to evening to do that. But anyway, prudence. Yeah, I'm focusing here on prudence. See, I'm trying to talk about it, but my purpose is not to say something that I already know, but to keep attention on the subject, to be able to see what kind of other ideas this subject brings to my mind. So now it brought up this writing and the personal history and understanding of what's going on a kind of broad level. And yeah, it's just one thing, but for example, I also may ask some questions. So if it's a topic like prudence, what do I know about prudence? How can I build a conversation about prudence? There may be relevant questions like what people usually find prudent, and is it different across ages, across cultures? What is it? What's prudent now, and does prudence actually represent something, some special quality? So it's just different questions. I'm trying to just make some. Maybe there will be questions of a sort, like how to become prudent, and what to do to become prudent, and what kind of people, philosophers or scientists or religious people wrote about prudence, what kind of books. Maybe there are some stories which cover this virtue. And all these questions, again, is another way of focusing your attention on the idea. And even if sometimes there may be very few questions which may be relevant to the idea, but it's always possible to make new questions. It's always possible to stop and think about something which is not obvious. For me, for example, now, well, I did this exercise yesterday, and there was one interesting. It wasn't even a question; it was an idea. So I came up with an idea, which is what will happen if I think about prudence every day for 5 minutes. And I basically tried to convince myself for the next 20 minutes yesterday to do this exercise every single day for 5 minutes. And by this exercise, I don't mean the exercise which I'm doing right now, but simply bringing this idea to mind and thinking about prudence every day. And yeah, it's very fascinating to try to imagine the course of your life if you take prudence as a kind of guiding star, or some sort of compass or navigator, and focus your attention on it for a couple of months or for a year or for your entire life, and think about, like, ask yourself, do you have like 5 minutes every day to think about prudence? And first of all, if you understand what is prudence, right, it's one of the most desirable quality which so many men chased from the beginning of time. And to be prudent is considered as one of the best, not achievement, but it's kind of bliss. Even though I don't believe that it's natural, so I believe that prudence, you can't actually achieve this. You can't be prudent if you don't do anything. You can just be born in a particular environment, educated by other people, and become prudent just by chance. So here you have to learn. You have to learn to think. You have to learn to understand yourself, the world, and you have to have lots of experience. But if you contemplate the idea of prudence for 5 minutes every day, think how far you can go in a week, in a month, in a year. And then you may ask yourself, like, really, does it make any sense? Should I think about prudence? Why should I do that? Since there are many other ideas in the world which you may pay attention to, right? And prudence probably not one of them, or it's not your favorite idea. Like, if, again, in my experience, well, I use the word wisdom, so I find myself thinking about wisdom quite often. So maybe not every day, but very often. And philosophy, since philosophy is translated like love of wisdom, so I guess the word philosophy comes across my mind so many times a day, like every day for the last, I don't know, 10 years probably. Maybe not every day, but I find myself thinking about philosophy very often. But prudence, just as an entity, as a kind of thing, as a quality, as a trait, as a virtue, it's a very interesting idea. Like, what kind of thoughts will come to you when you think about prudence for 5 minutes a day, and will it make you more prudent? You may just ask, like, you may run an experiment. Once again, just 5 minutes, or you may choose any amount of time, like few minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, depending on how much time you have. Like in my case, I definitely have 5 minutes every day to think about prudence. And if I don't have a natural desire, since it's unnatural, I mean, who the hell wants to to sit and think about prudence every day? So it's kind of, it may be boring, maybe even silly from the beginning, since you will probably not come up with so many ideas, and you'll sit and ask yourself, what am I doing? Like, why am I thinking about prudence? Does it make any sense? But still this exercise, I guess, if you go on and think about it for a week or a month or a few months, and if you notice some changes in your life, you'll probably evaluate this exercise, this idea, very high, and then you may give it more attention. I think that prudence essentially is the ability to pay attention to certain things as much as they deserve. So in the world, let's say, in the world of our sensual experience, in the world of sensations, so there are lots of things we can see, we can touch, we can smell, we can taste. And there's also a sort of linguistic world, so the world of ideas, such ideas like numbers, or some theories. triangle, whatever, philosophy. So there are aesthetics, beauty, love, whatever. So when we think about these ideas, it's also like they're not represented directly in the world. They're sorts of abstractions from our actions and our, the things which we see and which we feel. And when we think about these abstractions, there are so many of them. So if you sit and calculate how many ideas are here in the world, you'll probably not be able to calculate all of them during, in your entire life. But yeah, maybe in your entire life, you will be able to do that, but not certainly in a day or in a week. But why do we think about certain ideas and why don't we think about others? Since if I say the word temperance, for example, or fortitude, so if you're not an English, if you are not a native English a native English speaker, you probably never heard the word fortitude. And even if you are a native English speaker, you probably never heard that as well. But definitely, like, this is one of the idea, and this idea, it's an old idea. It was here for thousands of years, and so many people thought about this idea, and there were some books written about it. There were some cults, which some sciences, philosophies, which flourished around this idea. And yeah, why don't you think about it? Like, ask yourself, why don't you think about wisdom? Why don't you think about justice? Or why don't you think about any other ideas? And why do you think about those ideas which are in the, in your mental horizons? It's a very interesting question. So when you try to control your headspace, when you try to control what's going on inside in your thoughts, in your language, which words do you use to process the information? Like, how do you interpret certain experiences? How do you interpret what you see, what you feel, what you touch, what you taste? So when you analyze the words which you use, you may discover that there are lots of words which you use all the time. There may be a few thousand, maybe 10,000 words which you use regularly. And there are hundreds of thousands of words which you don't use at all. And again, for me, it's very exciting to see, to discover new words, new ideas, and integrate them in my personal experience. And often I find there's certain difference. For example, now I'm talking about prudence, and there's a particular like feeling involved in this thinking process. So I'm sitting on prudence. It's a nice idea. I'd like actually to think about it. I'd like to talk about prudence, and it makes me feel good. And sometimes there are other ideas, like, for example, maybe an idea of duty. So a few months ago, we talked about duty, and I was thinking about duty, and it wasn't so pleasant. Even though, again, it was like you always have different emotions and different thoughts depending on the idea, on your state, on your mood. And it's interesting to compare what kind of which kind of emotions come when you think about particular ideas. And yeah, death, for example, was one of the other topics which we discussed recently. And in my experience, again, when I'm thinking about death, I don't know why, but mostly I experience lots of pleasure. So when usually people don't like to talk about death, and it makes them feel bad, they become afraid, or they experience all sorts of negative emotions. They want to live forever. And in my experience, it's exactly the opposite. So whenever I think about death, I become excited. I find it very beneficial, very fruitful to have conversations about death and to have thoughts about death. And there are so many ideas, like prudence, one of them. Now I have to finish. There's already 25 minutes have gone. And so this is the exercise. So, and next time, again, you do the same. I do the same. So to understand the concept, you basically, you don't even, You don't prepare. The point is not, do not prepare anything. Just catch yourself at a particular moment and force yourself to talk for 30 minutes. If you sound stupid, if you sound, if you say something meaningless, it doesn't matter. The point is to focus your idea, to focus your attention on the idea of prudence. So if you're able to maintain to maintain the focus of your attention on this idea for half an hour, it's enough. It doesn't matter what exactly you say. See, it's of course you want to sound smart and prudent, and you don't want to look like a fool. But if you can't do it right now, it doesn't matter. The point is to preserve, like to continue the exercise. You choose different ideas, use those ideas which we discuss at our speaking clubs, and you'll see immediately how it will change your performance at the club. Since when you come to the club, most of the time you can't say anything meaningful. Like very rare you say something that makes lots of sense. Usually you repeat the same shit which had been stated so many times before. And when you do this exercise, you'll discover immediately that there are some new ideas which you wasn't aware of, which you weren't aware of. And then again, your performance at the club may improve tremendously if you just do this exercise once or a few times a week. If you do it on a daily basis, 2 times a day, in the morning and in the evening, you'll basically learn English so fast. All right, so that's it. Thank you for watching. See you next time.